and we're coming.
Kind of foggy down there. We're live today, not only in Washington. Geraldo's going to be joining us in just a moment. Brian is at the Super Bowl down in Atlanta. The person you're referring to, remember when Cory Booker, the senator from the great state that I live in, New Jersey, during the Kavanaugh hearings, had this, what is referred to now commonly as the Spartacus moment?
I'm going to release the email about racial profiling. And I understand that the penalty comes with potential ousting from the Senate. And if Senator Cornyn believes that I violated Senate rules, I openly invite and accept the consequences. This is about the closest I'll probably ever have in my life to an I am Spartacus moment.
Yeah. There you go.
In the middle of the Kavanaugh hearings, he was already signaling he was going to run for president. He made this big show of it, and in the end, nothing really came of the whole fight.
He said he was doing something that apparently had already been done.
Right. He was going to break Senate rules to release emails. Some of it had already come out. Chuck Grassley, the chairman, said, I'm releasing this stuff anyway, so it's one big show.
Well, a lot of people thought that the Kavanaugh hearing was an opportunity for so many of them to be heard.
Kamala Harris was on that committee as well.
Wondering if they were going to run for president in 2020. And this morning, Cory Booker posted this video on his Instagram post. Watch this.
I believe that we can build a country where no one is forgotten, no one is left behind, where parents can put food on the table, where there are good-paying jobs with good benefits in every neighborhood, where our criminal justice system keeps us safe instead of shuffling more children into cages and coffins. Together, we will channel our common pain back into our common purpose. Together, America, we will rise. I'm Cory Booker, and I'm running for President of the United States of America.
All right, let's bring in Geraldo Rivera. He joins us every Friday at this time. Geraldo, you just heard Cory Booker, who's the junior senator from the state you and I both live in. What do you make of where he said, where our criminal justice system keeps us safe instead of shuffling more children into cages and coffins?
Well, what he's talking about there is the revolving door of municipal justice, where kids get busted for small-time drug offenses, then get caught up in the system. They get longer and longer sentences until they become incorrigible career criminals. I think his call for criminal justice reform is probably the most attractive thing about the Cory Booker candidacy. You remember, Steve, back in 2012, I was going to run against Cory Booker for the open seat held by Frank Lautenberg, our longtime senator who passed away in office. And Kellyanne Conway, who's coming on the program, was advising me informally. She said, what I should do is do a spot standing in the worst block in the worst neighborhood in Newark and say, don't let Cory Booker do for New Jersey what he did for Newark when he was mayor here. It would have been a kind of a bitter and angry, ugly way to campaign. I ultimately decided not to run because the Republicans nominated someone who was a traditional conservative, despite my arguments that they needed someone who was more progressive to win in a purple state like New Jersey.
Pardon me, you're also pointing to something, though. What you just said is really important. You're right that people like optimistic, forward-looking messages, which is what you wanted to do if you had run. And with Cory Booker, when he's using a phrase like, we're throwing kids into cages, I mean, how negative, how down is that when you're trying to launch a presidential campaign?
Well, it may be down, Ed, but I'm not sure that it won't work. Remember, Cory Booker has been running for president since birth, basically. He's one of those lean and hungry politicians. He's charismatic. He's on Stephen Colbert and Bill Maher show every other night. I think that he'll try to go that route, the counterculture route, and see if that has any traction. I think yeah, go ahead, Ainsley. Sorry.
Is he left enough? I'm sorry, I interrupted you, but is he left enough? I mean, you have Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. You have several that are now saying tax the rich 90%, socialist, Medicare for all.
My impression is he'll be much more pragmatic than that. He'll try to run left of center, but not as far left as say, AOC is. Right. Booker's, I think his real problem is whether or not he's sincere, whether he's a deep thinker. That whole Spartacus preposterous moment during the Brett Kavanaugh hearings. What was that all about? I am Spartacus, I am Napoleon. I have no idea, but whether he has traction, we'll see.
All right.
He has been running a long time.
Something that's gotten a lot of traction over the last 6 weeks is the government shutdown. Of course, last week, as you know, Nancy Pelosi said, look, I'm not negotiating with Donald Trump until he opens the government. Last Friday, he reopened the government. Now, the signals are, and Nancy Pelosi very clear yesterday, she said there's no wall money in the deal. And yesterday, the president had heard these comments, and he said this in the Oval Office.
I don't think they're going to make a deal. I see what's happening. They're all saying, oh, let's do this, but we're not giving one dime for the wall. That's okay. But if they're not going to give money for the wall, it's not going to work. And if it's not going to work, then the politicians are really wasting a lot of time. We're allowing people to come into this country and sell drugs and human traffic and do all of these horrible things that if we had the simplicity of a well-constructed, beautiful barrier or wall, they wouldn't be able to come into our country.
And Geraldo, you have said on this program, give the president the money for his wall.
Well, I think that not to give the president, just on principle, just digging your heels in and saying you're not getting a dime to replace, to repair, or God forbid to expand the over 600 miles of fencing and barrier and wall that already exists is pure spite on Nancy Pelosi's part. And I think the president is probably right. She's digging in her heels, not saying a single dollar for a wall, giving the president really no chance. There's not a negotiation. In other words, in a negotiation, you sit, you have a compromise, it's painful. Okay, I'll give you 50 miles of wall if you give me the amnesty for the Dreamers and a ticket to citizen. You make a negotiation. It's difficult on both sides because you have to give up something you don't want to. But it just seems to me that she is dooming any potential negotiations right from the get-go, making much more likely that in mid-February the president will declare a national emergency because he's hell-bent on getting a barrier, getting a wall, getting some more of the division between our neighbors to the south, in physical form.
Why do you think he tweeted out? He said, let's just call this them walls from now on and stop playing political games. A wall is a wall. So remember he said at first, okay, we'll call it a barrier, whatever you want to call it. Now he's saying no.
And then he was going to put solar panels on top of it and, cool drinks with umbrellas and all the rest of it. I think that what the president has discovered, much to his chagrin, instantly I think that Governor Christie was right that the president went into the first shutdown without a clear idea of how he was going to get out of the back end of it. And now it's even worse because now Nancy Pelosi is telegraphing out front that no matter how these negotiations go, not a dime for the wall, no matter what. So I believe that what's happened is he sees he's not going to win in a negotiation, so he's going to go ahead. I think that's a signal, a clear signal, and as I said, that the president will declare a national emergency, use money from the Department of Defense or some other federal agency, Homeland Security, wherever the money exists, maybe FEMA, to start construction. I think in a way it's a face saving for the president. He must get some new wall out of it. Just as it is face-saving for Nancy Pelosi, she cannot allow a single foot of wall to be constructed. This is a sorry way to run a government.
Yeah, and Geraldo, as that political debate plays out, what's actually happening at our southern border, you look at what happened in Arizona, Border Patrol, just the last 24 hours or so, confiscating enough fentanyl to kill 57 million people in this country. How can Democrats continue to say this is a manufactured crisis when something like that factually happens at the border?
Well, they would say, I know Nogales very well. I'm a U of A grad. We used to go to Nogales, Mexico every Friday night. Now, no more. Now there's a lot more trepidation, a lot fewer social calls, casual calls across the border. The Democrats would argue that the fentanyl came in a produce truck, as most drugs do, through a port of entry, and that the wall would not have stopped it. To that, I reply, let's take Nancy Pelosi at her word. Let's enormously enhance the ports of entry. Well, I would make a humanitarian argument, a democratic argument for a wall. You hear the stories of these children dying in the desert trying to get across desperate because they can't get through ports of entry, where they found 4,000 bodies over the last year, people trying to make it across. I once tried. I made it with a group of undocumented migrants. We walked 45 miles. Many of them were at the end of their line by the time we made it across. Yes, Anthony.
Yep.
Well, the president has suggested he wants to beef up the ports and do something about a wall as well. So let's see what happens. But right now, it looks like the president is not going to get what he wants. Geraldo, always a pleasure. Thank you very much for joining us.
Have a good weekend.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
All right,
good
Jillian
seeing you too.
Good seeing you. Jillian has some more headlines for us.
Good
Hey,
morning
Jillian,
again.
happy
That's right.
Friday.
Good morning. Happy Friday. And let's get you caught up on this. A teenager missing for 2 weeks is found alive nearly 700 miles away from home. Officials say 14-year-old Savannah Pruitt left her Tennessee home on January 13th due to a family situation. She was just found in Wisconsin, but it's unclear how she got there. Savannah's adoptive father, Randall Pruitt, is behind bars, charged with sexual assault. Dozens of police officers rev their motorcycle engines so a cop killer could hear them as he's put to death. Well, as you can see, the officers setting up outside the prison where Robert Jennings was executed by lethal injection this week. He shot and killed Houston police officer Elston Howard during a robbery attempt in 1988. Officer Howard was 24 years old. 2 Georgia Democrats will most likely skip President Trump's State of the Union address. Congressman John Lewis and Hank Johnson both plan to boycott Tuesday's speech. Failed Georgia gubernatorial candidate Stacey Abrams will deliver the Democrats' response to the State of the Union. The Navy will honor the first female fighter jet pilot with the first ever all-woman flyover at her funeral tomorrow. Captain Rosemary Mariner was one of the first women to earn her wings, and at 21 years old became the first woman to fly a tactical fighter jet. In 1991, she became the first woman to command an aviation squadron during the Gulf War. Mariner died last week of ovarian cancer at 65 years old. Send it back to you.
What a pioneer.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Jillian.
Thanks, Jillian.
All right. Meanwhile, it is chilly outside, but the deep freeze that we had a couple of days ago, not quite as bad, but it's not over yet. A live look in Chicago where it is just 9 degrees. We are live in the Windy City, the chilly Windy City next.
Oh, boy. Yep. Looks like an icebox. Plus, bats taking over the basketball court. The wild scene inside one arena.
Basketball. Well, we are back with some extreme weather. Quick-moving snow could make roads slick today all the way from Kentucky right up through Philadelphia.
This week, at least 15 people killed in the record-breaking cold.
And let's not forget the middle of the country. Mike Tobin is in the middle of that, live from Chicago, where a warm-up maybe is on the way. Mike, does it feel warm yet? Doesn't look like it.
Well, the warm is all relative. It's amazing what'll make you start feeling comfortable. It's just about 10 degrees right now, and that's so much better than negative 20. It's still quite cold out here, but there's a lot of good news. Amtrak service is running again to the city of Chicago. The Metro electric lines are not running in and out of the city, and that's only because on Wednesday night a freight train derailed and took out a bunch of the infrastructure. Good news, FlightAware.com says we have fewer than 1,000 flight cancellations for the first time since this whole thing got started. A big issue right now is burst pipes. When the weather gets super cold, you'll get a plug of ice in the pipe, and that's what expands and breaks the pipe. And then when it starts to get warmer, it melts and water shoots all over the place. So plumbers are doing double duty right now. Also doing double duty are the firefighters. When you get extreme weather like this, between space heaters, bad ideas to get warm, and overtaxed systems, you get a lot of call for firefighters. And it becomes very difficult for them. A lot of times they bring in warming trucks so you can rotate the fire crews through. So among other things, they can get their hands moving. And beyond that, what you have are a lot of people in the Midwest just a little bit in shock for what we went through.
All right, indeed, those images are stark. But it is a lot warmer today, Mike, than what you had yesterday.
Well, the high yesterday was 0,
It is.
and now it's about 9 or 10 degrees. All right, thank you so much, Mike.
Beautiful picture.
All right, meanwhile, what about temperature-wise are we going to see today? Janice Dean, the weather machine, joins us from the streets of New York City, where some folks have braved the cold weather.
How are you guys? Where are you guys from?
Charlotte, North Carolina.
And do you love the cold?
Yeah, I like it.
You do? I love the optimism. Good for you guys. And what are your names?
I'm Titan.
Thor. Billy.
You guys, anniversary?
Yeah.
Do whatever she says.
I love it. What are your names?
Teresa.
Aw, thank you for coming out. Let's take a look at the temperatures. Yes, it's a little warmer here, relatively speaking, but look at these record lows, my friends. These are actual air temperatures. Minus 56 in Cotton, Minnesota, minus 38 in Mount Carroll, Illinois, and if that is verified, that will be the coldest state record. Minus 38, incredible. So there's your wind chill. I mean, it's minus 4 in Chicago, but that's a 26-degree difference than what it was yesterday. Minus 1 is what it feels like in New York City. Those are your wind chills, and look at the difference. 27-degree difference this time yesterday in Chicago. It is going to feel downright balmy. Here are your forecast temperatures as we head into Saturday and Sunday and Monday, getting close to 50 degrees, and then we'll have another Arctic blast, but it certainly won't be like this one. Here's your forecast today. We do have a system moving into the west, and it will feel relatively warmer across much of these areas. Here's your Super Bowl forecast. 60 degrees, light winds, maybe a little bit of rain, nothing they can't handle. And tomorrow it is Groundhog Day. I will be heading out to Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania to see what the groundhog has to say if we will have 6 more weeks of winter. All right, wave to everybody at home. Hi. Yay.
Excellent.
No hugs.
Not take 6 more weeks of winter, I don't think.
No.
Well, it's 6 weeks till spring. It's
60 degrees for the Super Bowl. That's perfect.
Okay.
All right, it is 20 minutes after the top of the hour. The self-proclaimed Spartacus is now in the 2020 race.
The closest I'll probably ever have in my life to an I am Spartacus moment.
Does Cory Booker even have a chance of standing out in a crowded Democratic field? We're going to debate it. Coming up next.
And we have counselor to the President of the United States, Kellyanne Conway, as well as NFL legend Jim Brown. They're coming up live.
0.378. That is the blood alcohol level of a drunk driver already on probation for driving drunk. Police say the suspect's blood was 4 times the legal limit and had the potential to actually be deadly. Next, $25 million. That is how much money California Governor Gavin Newsom wants for an emergency fund to help the migrants seeking asylum. If approved, the taxpayer money would be available this summer. And finally, $0. Beyonce and Jay-Z are bribing fans with free concert tickets for life if they go vegan for 1 month. Fans will be entered to win the tickets if they make the pledge to eat plant-based food and reduce their environmental imprint.
All right. Thanks, Ainsley. Fox News alert right now. Another Democrat entering the 2020 presidential race.
I believe that we can build a country where no one is forgotten, no one is left behind, where parents can put food on the table, where there are good-paying jobs with good benefits in every neighborhood, where our criminal justice system keeps us safe instead of shuffling more children into cages and coffins.
Cages and coffins. Some tough rhetoric there from Cory Booker. With an ever-growing field of Democrats, does he have a chance of standing out? Here to debate, Michael Knowles, host, of course, of The Michael Knowles Show, and Jason Nichols, a Democratic strategist. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Good morning, Ed.
Michael, do we finally have our Spartacus moment?
I don't know. Are we sure that Spartacus is even eligible to run for president? Last I checked, he was a Thracian. It's very hard to figure out how Cory Booker will break out in this field. Who is Cory Booker? In 2012, he was the moderate defending Mitt Romney. Today, he's Spartacus crying tears of rage. You saw this entire opening commercial was about victimhood, collective pain. This is another hard case for Cory Booker to make. Cory Booker, when he was a kid, his parents were executives at IBM. He's trying to pretend that he grew up in the school of hard knocks. Howard Schultz, a billionaire CEO, has a much better claim than Cory Booker does to growing up in victimhood. What is he going to run toward? He seems to be outflanked on all sides. Outflanked in achievement, outflanked in ideology. I just don't see. I think I haven't been this excited since Julian Castro announced he was running for president. Yeah. Another guy who probably won't even be vice president.
Jason, another day, another Democrat getting in.
Yeah, well, I agree with some of the things that my counterpart just stated. I think that Cory has some issues in a more progressive field where he has issues with his connection to big pharma, school choice, and his connections to Wall Street. So I think he's got some issues that many progressives are not going to like. However, I think he can stand out. I mean, he's a good politician. He seems to constantly win. So he's got a chance, and he's certainly got a better chance than Howard Schultz at any point. Howard Schultz doesn't have even a shot.
Well, we shall see. I can see that you and a lot of Democrats seem to be a little bit worried about about Mr. Schultz and whether or not he's going to pull.
He makes a good cup of coffee.
We'll debate that maybe on another day. Some people like Duncan a little better. Michael, though, I want to widen the lens and talk a little bit about the Democratic field. And you see the president already sort of licking his chops and saying, when you look at it, they're for open borders. They want more crime, essentially, in his words. And now when you look at what's happening on abortion in Virginia and other states, that the Democratic Party is getting more radical.
That's right. They're learning all of the wrong lessons from President Trump. They see that President Trump has had success by taking clear, bold, extreme policy stances. The difference is that President Trump's strong, bold policy stances have been for popular policies, border security, economic growth. Now the Democrats are doubling down on their issues, but they're for very unpopular policies. Open borders, 70, now 90% tax rates, and abortion not only in the second trimester, but in the third and apparently the fourth trimester, abortion after birth, according to the Democrat Virginia governor. This is not going to play very well.
Well, Jason, on that point, you're representing a party that is, pro-choice. They want abortion rights, but is it getting more and more extreme so that when you try to win a national election, this is going to blow up in your face? Because when you add what Michael said about taxes of 70, 80, 90%, how do you win a national election?
Well, first of all, we had a tax rate prior to 1980 that was 70% for the top 1%, and we had plenty of economic growth during that period from 1930 to 1980. So I don't think that that's actually going to be
there were a few loopholes in there. Maybe the people got around it, and we're not actually paying that much.
And what happened in the 1980s and 1990s? I think economic growth exploded during that era.
Let Jason get in.
Again, I think many of the policies that were mentioned, particularly things like Medicare for all, 70% of Americans want Medicare for all. So this is, a lot of the progressive policies that are being put forth, criminal justice reform, these are really popular policies with most Americans.
Well, the president just signed into law criminal justice reform. Are you for the president on that one?
No, I think the president has made a good start being bipartisan, but he listened to Democrats and the push that the American people wanted on criminal justice reform.
All right, and in terms of Medicare for all, we'll see how everyone's going to pay for that. We look forward to that debate. Jason, Michael, thanks for coming.
I'll be there.
Good to see you.
We'll have you back. The January jobs report about to come out. We will bring you the numbers live coming up. Plus, counselor to the President of the United States, Kellyanne Conway, live. She'll react to the jobs numbers and a whole lot of other big issues. Plus, our man Brian, live in Atlanta for the Super Bowl. Good morning again, Brian.
Hey, Ed, thanks so much. The Landmark Diner is still pumped up, even though I was gone, right? All right. So, of course, here with Mike and his great group. I'll talk to them in a moment. Mike, you have 2 words for me.
The ball and the wall. That's what we're talking about.
Now, Mike is an auctioneer. Mike, let's say, for example, this group wants to buy this ball. What is an opening bid? $50?
No, I'm going to start this at $10.
Let's go.
10 now, but on 25, 35, 45, 100. 200 down, 300, 400, 5, 600, 700. 7 go to heaven, tell me 7.
All right, there you go. Back in a moment with a very fun group here in Atlanta, Georgia, and Jim Brown. Don't go away.
Well, this is a Fox News alert. The Bureau of Labor Statistics has just announced that the unemployment rate for the past month was at 4%. But while it looked as if, because of the government shutdown, the jobs number of the number of jobs created in the last month was going to be dampened, it's actually a blowout number.
304,000 new jobs created in the month of January. Remember, Stuart Varney, who knows this better than anyone, was on last hour saying that the estimates were around maybe 200,000 jobs created, but people were being cautious because the government shut down, that Steve mentioned, that it might have had, a dampening effect on job creation.
People might be cutting back and not creating jobs or not hiring people.
So it was 304,000 despite the government shutdown. It might have been even higher if there had not been a shutdown. Exactly. These are very, very strong numbers.
They certainly are. So that's the headline. 4% is the unemployment. Also, Stuart
which went up slightly, which means more people are getting in the job market trying to get jobs.
Right. All right. So we'll keep you posted on all of that. In the meantime, the Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, is at a microphone, and he's about to announce something big. Listen to this.
He is, we're having issues with our audio. He's supposed to be talking about the nuclear arms treaty.
All right. We will.
Actually, we got it.
Let's try it now. They found the switch.
possess or flight test a ground-launched, intermediate-range cruise missile system with a range between 500 and 5,500 kilometers. In spite of this violation, for almost 6 years, the United States has gone to tremendous lengths to preserve this agreement and ensure security for our people, our allies, and our partners. We have raised Russia's noncompliance with Russian officials, including at the highest levels of government, more than 30 times. Yet Russia continues to deny that its missile system is noncompliant and violates the treaty. Russia's violation puts millions of Europeans and Americans at greater risk. It aims to put the United States at a military disadvantage, and it undercuts the chances of moving our bilateral relationship in a better direction. It's our duty to respond appropriately. When an agreement is so brazenly disregarded and our security is so openly threatened, we must respond. We did that last December when the United States, with strong support from all of our NATO allies, formally declared Russia in material breach of the treaty. I also then provided notice that unless Russia returned to full and verifiable compliance within 60 days, we would suspend our obligation under that treaty. We provided Russia an ample window of time to mend its ways and for Russia to honor its commitment. Tomorrow that time runs out. Russia has refused to take any steps to return real and verifiable compliance over these 60 days. The United States will therefore suspend its obligations under the INF Treaty effective February 2nd. We will provide Russia and the other treaty parties with formal notice that the United States is withdrawing from the INF Treaty effective in 6 months, pursuant to Article 15 of the treaty. Russia has jeopardized the United States' security interest, and we can no longer be restricted by the treaty while Russia shamelessly violates it. If Russia does not return to full and verifiable compliance with the treaty within this 6-month period, by verifiably destroying its INF-violating missiles, their launchers, and associated equipment, the treaty will terminate. Before I close, I want to give a special thanks to our NATO allies who have stood with us in our mission to uphold the rule of law and protect our people. Their solidarity reflects the historical strength and unity of the NATO alliance. Their support is good for our shared security. It's good for transatlantic unity, and it's good for international peace and security. President Trump is grateful for all that you have done. The United States is hopeful that we can put our relationship with Russia back on a better footing. But the onus is on Russia to change course from a pattern of destabilizing activity, not just on this issue, but on many others as well. The United States stands ready to engage with Russia on arms control negotiations that advance U.S. and allied and partner security and are verifiable and enforceable. Must also include all the partners. They must all responsibly comply with their obligations. As we remain hopeful of a fundamental shift in Russia's posture, the United States will continue to do.
All right, we've heard the headline right there. The United States is suspending the nuclear pact with Russia, the IMF. We should point out that apparently Russia has been in violation of the arms agreement for more than 5 years. And back in December, our federal government gave Russia 60 days to clean up its act. They did not, and so the Secretary of State from Foggy Bottom just announced that effective tomorrow, we're suspending it.
Interestingly, standing up to Russia against the narrative of many in the media that this president will not stand up to Russia, saying, look, you're in breach of this. You've been, as you say, for years.
Right. 5 years.
Enough is enough.
Yeah, we said comply on December 1st, and here we are February 1st, 60 days later, and we're giving them full warning. We're pulling out now. What will this lead to? A new arms race?
The question is, without this treaty, with the U.S. pulling out, critics of the administration are saying this could lead to a new arms race because without the treaty in place, Russia may all of a sudden get even more arms, and that at least even if they're in breach, if there's a treaty in place, we might be able to watch them a little bit more, and now that this might open it up.
So what is this treaty that we're suspending? It prevents the United States and Russia from possessing any land-based cruise missiles that can strike within a 500 to 5,000 kilometer range, which is about 300 to about 3,500 mile range. The deal was signed in '87 by Reagan and Gorbachev. It was designed to keep ground-based nuclear weapons out of Europe. But as you can see, our headline, as of 2 minutes ago, the United States suspending the nuclear pact with Russia because they've been breaking the rules for the past 5 years.
If they're not in compliance, we have to do something. We can't allow them to get away with it.
In a couple minutes, we're going to get live reaction from Kellyanne Conway at the White House on this and the jobs numbers and a whole bunch of other issues as well.
All right.
Right back.
See a little.
Well, this is a Fox News alert. Just about 10 minutes ago, there you can see our Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, at the Department of State, where he announced that the United States is withdrawing from the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty as effective tomorrow, February 2nd. Let's bring in Kellyanne Conway, counselor to the President of the United States. She's inside the building. The weather outside, not great. Kellyanne, what does this all mean?
Well, I'm going to allow Secretary Pompeo's statements speak for themselves. He's our chief diplomat. Obviously, he had a big announcement today, didn't leak, and I will let his words speak. But I think in the broader scheme of this president's relations around the globe, he is somebody who's trying to bring peace and prosperity here and abroad, but at the same time, his America First policy extends all the way around the globe as well. And his first duty is to keep us all safe. It's why he's trying to secure the southern border, and it's also why he's trying to negotiate around the globe where appropriate.
Sure. I've been watching people on TV and hearing them on the radio talk about how, this president is never tough on Russia. Well, it looks like we just got tough on Russia.
Yeah, well, he's been tough on Russia for a while, and I'd like to see how they're going to spin this one. This is a president who has put additional sanctions on Russians, on bad actors, where he and his Treasury Department have seen fit. He's expelled 60-plus Russians from this country, shut down 2 of their consulates at last count, and I think pushed back on Putin not once but twice when one of his puppets, Assad in Syria, gassed his own people. When the president saw that, he took action immediately. And so that should not be conflated with the fact that when he wants to meet with Vladimir Putin, as they did several months ago for all the world to see in a joint press conference, they're discussing issues where these 2 major countries maybe can work together to defeat ISIS once and forever. Of course, the territorial caliphate in Syria is all but destroyed. The president just tweeted about these endless wars in Syria and Afghanistan. He promised to get out of them $50 billion a year, a lot of treasure, and more importantly, lives lost. And so I would like to see how they spin this, that maybe he's trying to show this because he's worried about the collusion that doesn't exist. It's really silly. People have to start looking at the facts and the figures about how tough this president has been on Russia, at the same time trying to negotiate peace where he can, and big resolve by 2 major countries where it's appropriate.
Kellyanne, Senator Cory Booker from New Jersey announced this morning that he's going to be running for president. It's a Friday. We're heading into the weekend. What is the administration's reaction to that?
Welcome. The water seems warm. Welcome to dive in along with, 10, 15, 30 other Democratic candidates. I would ask him a couple of questions today as he runs from my native New Jersey. One is, what's wrong with the candidates that are already in there? What's your objection to Kamala Harris running, Elizabeth Warren, Kirsten Gillibrand, these others who have already announced, Tulsi Gabbard maybe? If he were a Republican running against him, they would immediately call him a sexist for running against these women in the Democratic field. But I'd also ask him, what exactly have you accomplished that qualifies you to be the commander-in-chief and president of the United States? And being a motivational speaker who's, quote, tinny, the words of David Axelrod, the mastermind behind President Obama's presidential victories, he sort of slammed him today by saying he doesn't really sound like an inspirational leader sometimes. He sounds like more like a motivational speaker who can be tinny. I think people witnessed that when he unloaded for all the cameras to see on now Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh.
Spartacus moment.
Well, his Spartacus moment, but it went beyond that. Remember, he was pretending that he was breaking with protocol in the Senate, that he was going to release confidential emails, and I believe it was Senator Cornyn of Texas reminded him that those had already been released. He also, I think people should go and look at his record in Newark, New Jersey. Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook, about 8 or 9 years ago, gave $200 million in matching funds to Newark for its school school system.
Yeah.
And a whole bunch of that, millions and millions of dollars, went to politically connected consulting firms.
Yeah, a lot of it didn't pan out.
And you know, I first came upon Cory Booker many years ago when he was a pro-school choice advocate. But the modern Democratic Party in which he's running for the presidential nomination has moved so far to the left that he can't even bring himself to continue to help those school children.
Well, Kellyanne, let's talk about the left, because Speaker Nancy Pelosi basically suggested to the president, open up the government and I'm going to negotiate. Yesterday she had a news conference, first one in a while, and said no money for the wall. Do you feel had?
No, not at all. She's revealing who she is, and she's against rank-and-file members in her Democratic conference who were elected in Trump districts. There are 31 of them. 22 of them are freshmen. They and Trump won the same congressional districts. You've got to believe that they represent people who believe border security is national security, think it's a great idea to work on DACA, TPS, to have 2,750 new Border Patrol agents, 75 new immigration judges, and all the support that requires. Also, $800 million to meet humanitarian needs, $800 additional million for technology and drug detection. We just had, at a port of entry, but we just had the largest seizure of fentanyl in the history of this nation. 254 pounds could have killed over 50 million Americans, a street value of $102 million. Yes, it came at a port of entry, but that's the stuff we know about. What about everything we don't know about that's coming?
Luckily, they do scanning at those ports, which is the president has asked for more money for that as well. Kellyanne, thank you very much. Have a good weekend.
Thank you.
Let's see what the committee
Super Bowl weekend.
Yep. Brian is live in Atlanta for the Super Bowl. He's got a very special guest with him, Jim Brown, coming up next. There he is right there.
But first, let's check in with Sandra Smith with what's coming up top of the hour.
Good morning, Ed, and we'll see you in a bit. Friday morning in America's newsroom, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo speaking a short time ago, announcing the U.S. withdrawal from a landmark arms control treaty with Russia. Will be live at the State Department with the latest in moments. Plus, President Trump calling border talks a waste of time in a new interview. So what's his next step? And the Dow, the best January for the Dow Jones Industrial Average in over 30 years, as some are now calling on the left for taxes as high as 90% on the rich. Join us live in America's newsroom. Good Friday morning, top of the hour.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Landmark Diner. In Buckhead, Atlanta, side of Super Bowl 53. Great crowd here. Punchline right next door. And the greatest athlete of the 20th century is right across from me. Jim Brown, ladies and gentlemen.
All right.
Jim, first off, a little football. You spent a little time with Bill Belichick. He's been a friend of yours since he coached the Browns. What was it like? How is his mindset? What do you think about the game?
He is the genius of professional football. He's got the best mind in the game. He's a great humanitarian. He comes off quirky sometimes because he's mentally so extreme.
Right.
But I love him.
Yeah, he came and visited you late. With all he has going on, he spent time with you.
He came and we're sitting up in my suite, which was just a little one, you know. And he brought his wife. And we talked about everything.
Yeah, he appreciates everything you've done in life. Today, from 4 to 7, you're going to be at the Top Golf Club in Atlanta. Jim Brown's Legends of Golf tournament will be there. Sanders, Emmitt Smith, Adrian Peterson, Dickerson, Marcus Allen. Great running backs. Absolutely. All for the American program, right?
That's right, American.
So come out and play golf. It's for everybody, and you get to see these great guys.
General public mixed with the stars.
I got a chance to know you. And I know, as great as you were in football, you've done more for this country as an activist. It is day one of Black History Month. We're going to see some footage of you with Muhammad Ali, at a time in which they told you, Syracuse football team, black players stay in these hotels and you stay in others. How far has America come? What is your thought today on Black History Month?
Well, first of all, I love the country. You know, and I've struggled all my life to deal with freedom, equality, and justice. And I hold no grudges. And, of course, it is the best country in the world, but we have things that we have to get right, and so we continue to work. But what's so great about it, you know, and I'm going to be very blunt, it's not white and black, because when you look at those stands out there, right, how many white people do you see that's paying their money to see predominantly black teams?
Right.
So America's come a long way, and it's great because, you know, we came from slavery. You know, we advocate of slavery, you know, and that's a long ways to come.
You came from St. Simon's Islands in Georgia. You guys heard of Georgia? Yeah.
Georgia.
You end up in Manhasset, New York, and then you end up in Syracuse. You go to Cleveland, and you've become one of the most famous men in America. Your thought and prediction on the game on Sunday. We know it's going to be close. What do you think?
Brian, come on, Brian.
Give me I know who you want, but who do you predict?
Well, he says he knows who I want, but now who am I? I'm going to predict the team that I want to win with the coach that I love.
Bill Belichick.
Yes.
Yeah. Sadly, they beat the Falcons in the greatest comeback ever, and we're in Atlanta. All right. Jim Brown, thanks so much. I'll see you at that golf tournament from 4 to 7 today, Top Golf in Atlanta. Back in a moment. Fox and Friends continues.